We talked for 10, maybe 15 minutes, then she said she had to go. She wished me well and left me standing there like an idiot, staring at the wind shaking the leaves above her empty bench. Something cracked inside me that day. And I hated it. I didn't want to respect her. I didn't want to admire her. I wanted to win. But more and more, I couldn't even remember what winning looked like. That night, I sat on my bed with my laptop open. I was halfway through another video by Dr. Omar when I hit pause and just sat there staring at my screen. What was I even doing? This wasn't just about Amina anymore. It wasn't about revenge. Somewhere along the way, I had crossed a line. I was actually interested. Not in proving Islam wrong, but in figuring out what the hell it really was. I had questions I didn't know how to ask. I had emotions I couldn't pin down. I had this weird, growing feeling that maybe I was the one being challenged, me, not her. That realization pissed me off and calmed me down at the same time. I didn't know it then, but that night was the last time I would ever think about Islam as hers. From that point on, it started becoming mine too. The thing about trying to expose someone's beliefs is, sometimes they expose you instead. I didn't plan to change. I didn't even want to change. But something was happening quietly under the surface. I started waking up earlier, not for any real reason, just couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed at 5 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering what was happening to me. Why did I feel off? Why did everything I used to enjoy, video games, parties, flirting, meaningless conversations, feel so empty now? I wasn't suddenly super spiritual. I still cursed too much. Still argued online. Still judged people like it was a hobby. But deep down, something was shifting. And it scared me. One night, I was walking home from a late study session and I passed by the masjid again. The same one a friend had invited me to weeks before. I'd been once, out of curiosity, but didn't stay long. This time, the lights were on, and I could hear soft recitation inside. Something about it felt magnetic. I walked closer, not really knowing why. My heart was racing like I was doing something illegal. I stood at the door for a full minute, then turned around and walked away. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I turned back to what I could control. My laptop, my notes, my questions. I made a new rule: no more YouTube debates. No more polemics. Just read the Quran. Just read it. Like a book. Start to finish. So I did. It was confusing at times, sure. But it wasn't chaotic. It felt personal. Not like a history book or a textbook. More like a conversation. And I didn't always understand what it was saying, but I couldn't ignore how it said it. There were verses that made me stop mid-sentence. Do they not reflect upon themselves? Allah created the heavens and the earth and everything between them in truth and for an appointed term. But most people deny they will meet their Lord. Quran 30:8. It was like the book was talking to me. Not yelling. Not preaching. Just asking. I didn't have answers. And for the first time in a long time, that felt okay. I started praying. Not like Muslims do. No ritual, no Arabic, no direction. Just me, sitting on my bedroom floor at 2 a.m., whispering into the dark. God, if you're there, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. But I think I'm starting to believe you are. And I don't know what that means. No thunder. No light beams. No mystical experience. But I slept like a rock that night. A week later, I saw Amina again. This time, I didn't plan it. I was just grabbing a smoothie and she was standing in line ahead of me. I almost turned around, but she looked back and smiled like she'd been expecting me. Hey, she said. Long time. Yeah, I laughed. Been doing research. She raised an eyebrow. Academic or personal? Both, I said before I could even think about it. We sat on a bench nearby, sipping smoothies in silence for a moment before she said, You seem different. I feel different. Still planning your argument? I smirked. Not exactly. I think the argument kinda turned on me. She chuckled. That's usually how it goes. I hesitated, then asked, How did you know it was real? Your faith, I mean. Amina thought for a moment, then said, When I stopped needing proof and started feeling peace. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about trusting the one who does. That hit me. Not because it was poetic or wise or whatever. It hit because I wanted that. Not just to understand Islam, but to belong to something bigger than myself. To believe in something that didn't fall apart under pressure. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about Amina anymore. This was about me. The next Friday, I went back to the masjid. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't bring a friend. Just walked in, barefoot, nervous as hell. A kind old man handed me a chair near the back. I listened to the khutbah, not understanding half of it, but hanging on every word like it was oxygen. When the prayer started, I didn't know what to do, so I just watched. Rows of men standing, bowing, prostrating together in perfect rhythm. Like a tide. Like a heartbeat. I'd never seen anything like it. Afterward, someone approached me. First time? Second, I said. But the first that mattered. He smiled. Want to talk? I nodded. We sat. Talked for hours. He answered my questions. Gently. Without pushing. Then he said something I'll never forget. You don't have to understand everything to take the first step. You just need to know where your heart is pointing. That night, I stood alone in my room, shaking, heart pounding, and whispered the words I had read so many times. Ashhadu in la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But I knew who I was now. Becoming Muslim didn't magically fix my life. There was no lightning bolt of enlightenment. No angels singing. No immediate clarity about who I was supposed to be now. Just peace. A kind of peace I didn't even know I'd been searching for. That first night after I said the Shahada, I sat on my bed for hours. No music. No distractions. Just me. And this quietness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. It was like I'd stopped fighting something I didn't even know I was wrestling with. Of course, the questions didn't stop. How do I pray? How do I fast? What do I tell my friends? What do I do about my past? But weirdly, none of that overwhelmed me. For once, I wasn't chasing answers to win anything. I was just learning. Like a beginner. Like someone who wasn't ashamed to say, I don't know. But I want to know. And people were there to help. The brothers at the masjid welcomed me like I'd always been part of the family. They taught me how to pray, how to make wudu, how to open my palms and talk to God with nothing but raw honesty. And man, those first few prayers? I didn't understand all the Arabic. I messed up the movements. I doubted myself every second. But I cried every time. Not because I felt guilty, but because, for once, I felt seen. I didn't see Amina for almost a month. I didn't avoid her. I just didn't seek her out. Not anymore. She wasn't the point. She wasn't the goal. She was the door that led me here, and I was grateful for that. But I had walked through that door and I was standing in a whole new room now. I remember the first time I saw her. It was the second week of my sophomore year at UCLA. I had just transferred from a community college and was still finding my place. The campus was buzzing with activity, people handing out flyers, music playing in the quad, and students lounging around like they owned the world. She was sitting under a tree near the humanities building, a book in her lap and this peaceful energy about her. She wore a light-colored hijab, a simple blouse and jeans. Nothing flashy, but somehow she stood out like the only thing in color in a black and white movie. I didn't know her name. I didn't even know what hijab meant back then. All I knew was, she was beautiful. Not Instagram model beautiful, not that airbrushed kind of thing. She had this dignity about her. Like she didn't care if you noticed her or not. And that made me notice her even more. I kept passing by that spot the next few days, hoping to catch another glimpse. Eventually, I got my chance when we ended up in the same ethics discussion group. Her name was Amina. She had a soft voice, but her words were sharp. She didn't speak much, but when she did, everyone listened. She always seemed calm, like nothing fazed her. When people debated heated topics, she stayed cool, quoting philosophers and scholars like she was born in a library. I was hooked. So, like any mildly cocky 20-year-old American guy, I waited until after class one day and casually caught up to her. Hey, Amina, right? I said, trying not to sound like I'd been rehearsing that line in my head for 3 days. She looked at me, smiled politely, and nodded. Yes. You're Tyler? I grinned. Yeah. I was wondering if you maybe wanted to grab a coffee sometime? Just hang out or whatever. There was a pause. Not awkward, just thoughtful. Then she said, very gently, I appreciate you asking. But I don't date. I blinked. At all. She nodded. I'm Muslim. Dating isn't really part of my values. I laughed a little, thinking maybe she was joking. Wait, like, ever? She smiled again. It's not personal. I just don't engage in relationships outside of marriage. Now look, I've been turned down before. That's life. But this one hit different. It wasn't that she rejected me. It was like, I never even had a shot. I wasn't just the wrong guy, I was the wrong kind of guy. I didn't show it then, of course. I nodded, said something dumb like, respect that, and walked off. But inside I was pissed. Not at her, exactly. But at how untouchable she seemed. Like she was above everything. I didn't get it. Was it arrogance? Was it brainwashing? Was it some kind of superiority complex? And that's when the thought came to me. I'll show her. I'll study her religion, find its flaws, and throw them in her face. Let's see how high and mighty she feels when I'm done. It wasn't just about getting back at her, it was about pulling down the wall she hid behind. I wanted to see her squirm. To admit that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't better than the rest of us. That was the night I opened a new tab on my laptop and typed into Google. Contradictions in the Quran. I didn't know it yet, but that one search would end up changing my life in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. At first, it was all fun and games. I watched hours of YouTube debates, read random Reddit threads, skimmed through blogs written by angry ex-Muslims and overly confident Christian apologists. I picked out verses, took them out of context, and prepared arguments in my head like I was going into battle. But as I kept digging, something strange started happening. The more I read from actual Muslim sources, the ones that weren't filtered through hate or fear, the less cartoonish it all seemed. I expected fire and brimstone, brainwashing, oppression. What I found was structure, logic, even beauty. Still, I kept telling myself I was just doing this to destroy her arguments. I was gathering ammo. That's it. I wasn't impressed. I wasn't moved. I wasn't curious. At least, that's what I told myself. But in reality, the crack had already started. If you had asked me back then why I was still reading about Islam 2 weeks after Amina turned me down, I would have said something like, I'm just curious. Total lie. I wasn't curious. I was obsessed. Not with the religion, at least not consciously, but with her. And if I couldn't get her attention by being charming, I was gonna get it by being smart. Smarter than her. Smarter than her religion. I'd study Islam like a test I was gonna ace, and then use that A+ to shove her smugness right back in her face. So I dug deeper. I started watching long-form debates. Muslims versus atheists, Muslims versus Christians, Muslims versus former Muslims, with huge YouTube followings. At first, I only paid attention to the parts that confirmed what I already believed, that religion was outdated, irrational, and probably toxic. But the more I listened, the more things started to shift. There was this one guy, Dr. Omar something, I don't remember his full name, but he wasn't flashy or aggressive like the others. Just calm, logical, and honestly, kinda brilliant. He didn't argue like he wanted to win. He explained like he wanted you to understand. I hated how reasonable he sounded. I started reading the Quran, an English translation of course, and at first, I looked at it the same way I looked at Shakespeare in high school. Dense, confusing, kinda boring. But I couldn't stop thinking about certain verses. And we have certainly created man and we know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein. Quran 50:16. It hit different. Not in a religious way. More like a gut punch. I kept thinking, how the hell did this book, written over 1,000 years ago, sound like it was talking directly to me? Still, I reminded myself, this wasn't a spiritual journey. It was an operation. A mission. I even started showing up at campus events hosted by the Muslim Students Association. I told myself I was doing field research. Truth was, I just wanted to hear how they talked, what they believed, how they answered questions. I even asked questions myself, skeptical ones. They didn't get defensive. In fact, they welcomed it. Invited me to a Friday prayer. Offered to buy me coffee afterward. No one tried to convert me or argue with me. They just treated me like a human being. And I hated how hard that was to attack. So I pushed harder. I made a list of things I thought were problematic. Women's rights, violence in history, punishments, all of it. I typed up notes. I rehearsed speeches. I planned a conversation with Amina in my head 100 different ways. I was gonna walk up to her, lay out everything I had learned, and tear her world down with facts and contradictions and gotcha questions. But the day I saw her again, sitting on the same bench under the tree, something unexpected happened. I froze. She looked up, saw me, and smiled, same peaceful smile. "Hi, Tyler." Just that. No bitterness. No awkwardness. Just warmth. And suddenly, everything I had rehearsed sounded stupid. Petty. Well, we talked. Casual stuff. She mentioned she was fasting that day, some voluntary fast, not even Ramadan, and I asked why. Her answer? To remind myself that I'm more than my wants. I didn't know what to say to that. Still, when we did finally run into each other again, outside the library, mid-afternoon sunlight pouring through the trees, I knew I had to speak. She looked surprised, then smiled. "Hey, stranger." I smiled back. "Hey, you look peaceful." "I feel it," I said, and I meant it. There was a pause. Then I said, "I just wanted to thank you." Her eyes softened. "For what?" "For being true to yourself. For not compromising your values. For planting the seed, even if you didn't know it." She didn't say anything for a second. Then she said something that nearly broke me. "Tyler, I prayed for you." My throat tightened. "What?" "I didn't know what you were going through. But I could tell something was shifting. I asked Allah to guide you, not for me, but for you." That was it. That was all she said. And in that moment I knew I didn't love her the way I thought I did. I admired her. I respected her. But what I felt now wasn't about her at all. It was about what she had led me to without ever trying. We didn't date. We didn't become some Hallmark story. She graduated a year later and moved out of state for grad school. We've messaged a few times, Eid greetings, the occasional, hope you're doing well. But that's it. And honestly, that's enough. Because I didn't become Muslim for her. I became Muslim in spite of her. Because of her. Through her. All at once. She lit the match. God lit the fire. People still ask me about my story sometimes. Especially other reverts. They want the fairy tale version. The love story. The Hollywood ending. But I always tell them the truth. This was never about revenge. Not really. It was about identity. About ego. About a broken guy who thought he was too smart to believe in anything, trying to prove a woman wrong, and being humbled by the very thing he tried to destroy. And in that humility, I found peace. Not the kind that comes from winning, but the kind that comes from surrender.